Hi, I'm Loren Roosendaal, and in this episode of Transformed, we're going to be looking at building the ideal learning experience. Now, in the past episode, we've looked at all the different solutions that you might apply, and of course, we've looked at core learning principles that you need to deal with. But once you have all of those, how do you put it all together into an effective and powerful learning experience? Well, I think the key notion is that it's important to keep in mind that all of the elements that we have available to us can still matter and be important at some point in the process. Just because classroom teaching has been the same for 400 years does not mean that we shouldn't do it. But it does mean we should be critical about what belongs in the classroom and how we deal with it. So to me, a really well-organized learning experience is one where even if we do apply classroom learning, we make sure it's short enough and it hits those points which classroom learning is really great at. So really what we want to do when we're teaching people in a classroom, we want to be able to focus on the complicated issues that require this level of classroom interpersonal interaction to really help take a point home and get people into the learning experience, get people enthusiastic about a topic, and get them to really experience how it is to go through that topic together and deal with the dilemmas and cases that occur with it. And most of the time what goes wrong when you're trying to plan that kind of an experience is because of the fact that you're starting with a wholly different audience, you spend most of your time in a training or in front of a classroom actually just literally rehashing what could have been in the theory book, sort of writing onto the whiteboard almost pages from a book, just to get people along with what you're explaining, because there's always those people in the classroom that don't understand some core concepts. So this can be really tough. Let's say you're teaching medicine, there is someone who's got 5 particular symptoms, and what you really want to talk about is how would you treat this person? And what would you do if his circumstances changed, if his symptoms changed? What would your diagnosis be then? And then you find out as you're standing there that the people in the classroom actually all don't quite understand these symptoms correctly. And while one person on the left may not understand, let's say, why this particular symptom, like let's say increased heart rate, is so relevant here, another doesn't understand what indication could be given by one of the other symptoms. And so what you end up doing is basically acting like a book, acting like a human encyclopedia and just explaining all these symptoms and explaining what that symptom could mean. And by the time you've explained that, the lesson is over and you haven't gotten to teaching these people what really matters, which is to reason using all that knowledge. And so that's why when you're building an ideal learning experience, in my opinion, what you should be looking at doing is making sure that before people come into the classroom, they have the same knowledge level. So embrace new intelligent learning platforms for that. Make sure that long before you ever organize a classroom session, you have material being deployed to people through a system that can match their capability level, ensure that they learn the basics and get to roughly the same level for your classroom experience. And suddenly you'll find it is so much more effective. You can get a really powerful experience in, and you can cover those topics and things that you need to cover. And the funny thing is, I've seen this in practice in so many places with so many clients we've worked with. Once you got just that preparation done, sometimes you find out you don't need the classroom session at all. Sometimes you find out that classroom session you can now do in 2 hours what used to take half a day. And this is where we're trying to get. And then after that, it's important to realize that that classroom session is just a moment in time. And we've talked about retention earlier on in this season. And if you're not going to do anything beyond the classroom session, just keep in mind, you might as well not teach it. So make sure after a classroom session that supplementary material is made available, made accessible to people. Now, I would encourage you not to make the mistake of thinking, oh, we'll just plunk some modules on our LMS. Instead, realize that most of the stuff you're going to put on an LMS is nothing but comprehensive reading. So why not embrace that and publish that information on a wiki, make sure it's available, readable, accessible to everyone. And then you get much more into the spirit of what that information is really for. It's for looking up and reading. Of course, that's not enough. So make sure that you use intelligent learning platforms to, after the fact, after the class, unlock maybe even new material, more advanced material, and get that repetition cycle going. Make sure if you want people to know something for years, that they somehow repeat it a little bit for years. And if you've got all of that down, you've got all of that perfect, then might be a good idea to start looking into virtual training, into virtual reality, into ways you can get people to practice their skills in a sort of real life environment without inflicting any of the damage or other catastrophic results that they might inflict if they do something wrong in real life. But these, I think, are the first and most important core principles of getting a complete learning track, a complete learning experience right. Just keep in mind that even if you do design the experience that way, there is still the matter of execution. Richard Bandler loves to say, the map is not the territory, right? So you can create this ideal learning experience, but just keep in mind that 90%, or maybe, if you do really well, 70 or 80% of that comes down to how you act once the learning experience has started. Because no plan really survives, no battle plan really survives first contact with the enemy, no learning plan really survives first contact with your students, with the people that you're teaching. So to find out more about how to deal with that, and the mess that might come into existence once your material meets real students, once the rubber meets the road, join me on the next episode when we'll be talking about making sure the learning actually works in practice. So, if you want to stay in touch, be sure to like and subscribe and follow this channel, and I'll see you on the next episode.